pets and people. A dog pauses to reflect. A pooch keeps knocking, but it can't come in. Do you think this bride will fall? I do. Simba plays in the suds. A doggy diva has some downtime. And beachgoers wave goodbye to comfort. It's the show that will have you sick, stay, laugh, and beg for more. Welcome to Funniest Pets and People.
Hey, tough guy, watch these clips. Yeah, I'm talking to you. You think you can handle them, tough guy?
If you're gonna sleep in that sweater in a plaid bed with your favorite stuffed animal, you had better be a tough guy. And Ferdinand certainly is. I'd watch those hands. I mean, you mess with Ferdinand's little buddy and you are messing with Ferdinand, okay? Is his bark worse than his bite? I don't know. You want to find out? Barney just got back from the doggy dentist where he had his wisdom teeth extracted. Suki sees this as a golden opportunity. She needs to play her advantage while he is still a little groggy from the nitrous. Oh boy, looks like it wore off. Who's a tough guy now, huh? Jimmy the reindeer hated it when birds he didn't even know asked him to put in a good word with Santa for them. He doesn't even know Santa. I mean, he's Blitzen's second cousin, once removed and only by marriage. He maybe sees Blitzen once or twice a year at family gatherings. And the last thing he wants to do is ask for favors. Can't these turkeys understand that? A thin pane of glass and centuries of domesticity are the only two things keeping these two from switching places. As far as the duck and the dog were concerned, this yard was only big enough for one pet that began with the letter D. And it would be different if it were a horse and a cat or a goose and a ferret, right? Those start with different letters. Nope. There could only be one D pet in this yard, and I've got news for him. Whichever one wins has to take on the donkey waiting in the wings. You know, Hildy is usually a mild-mannered pooch, but enough is enough. By golly, it was time to get a new vacuum. You see, Hildy is tired of walking around in his own dander, and this little guy is not going to rest until they buy him a new vacuum. You know, one that works. Everyone thought Teddy was just a natural ladies' dog. But in reality, he needed to give himself a pep talk in the mirror before hitting the dog park and asking some cutie to go on a walk with him. If it weren't for these little chats, Teddy just wouldn't have anyone to walk with at all. Well, except his reflection, that is. Dating two girls at the same time is never easy, especially when you don't drive and you rely on your mom to schedule your play dates in the yard. Nope, it was inevitable. There was bound to be some hurt feelings. But maybe the three of them could split a mud pie and hash this out. Time to unfasten the collar, kick back, and relax. It's time for Funniest Pets and People Unleashed. Hey, it's impression time. Rick and Binks are doing their impression of a professional basketball game. Yep, that is the sound the players' sneakers make when they're on the hardwood floor. If you close your eyes and pay $10 for a hot dog, it's like you're sitting courtside. Fantastic. You've heard of playing monkey in the middle, right? Well, these guys are playing monkey in the mirror. And who is that handsome devil staring back at him? Ooh, 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 ha, 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 ha. Svetlana was really nervous about dancing with her klutzy little brother at the reception for fear he would embarrass her. Cool. Now into the competent arms of her new husband. Suddenly the kid brother isn't so klutzy, is he? Wow, that is one devoted gardener. Snowball just planted the catnip this morning, but she decided to keep the seedling warm and won't leave until it has sprouted. Looks like someone has a green thumb on her white paw.
Open it real quick.
It had been this way at the Canterbury Inn ever since the housekeeper misplaced the Do Not Disturb sign. You know, they really need to get another one of those signs. Mom suggested the new couple save a couple of bucks by not hiring wine stewards to open the champagne. Come on, she said. Any chucklehead can open a bottle of champagne. No, Mom, not any chucklehead. It's no wonder little Jamie grew up to be a middleman. It was ingrained in him early on. Well, just like now, he would collect a good or a service, in this case, a cookie, and then pass it on to the consumer at an inflated price. Of course, it took him a few years to tag on his commission. It was a hard-earned lesson, bud. As you can see, in the early days, Jamie always forgot to take his cut. Rascal waited until they took the dog for a walk, so he knew the coast would be clear. But in this house, it wasn't the dog you had to watch out for. It was the cat. Before the Parks and Recreation Department would approve Mitzi to be a camp counselor, she had to pass the CPR course. Lucky for her, she could practice on her old friend Stripes. Camp Kitty Wonka Honka Tonka, here we come. Coming up, a dog drowning his sorrows. And a blind date turns out great. When we return to Funniest Pets and People. Welcome back to Funniest Pets and People. It's just like regular works except for, you know, the water and such. Well, no wonder the grass isn't growing. They hired Sparky to be the gardener. Now, while I am sure that he is quite the bargain, you get what you pay for, right? Our doggy dentist reminds us that even if you don't have time to brush and floss, always make sure you rinse and spit. Don't allow food particles to grab hold of your canines. Be a cavity crusader. Woof, woof. Whenever they went to the pool, Yolanda, Rolanda, and Jan liked to sit poolside. And when they went to the beach for the first time, they did exactly the same thing. But Yolanda, Rolanda, and Jan didn't realize that at the beach, the water fights back. The tough decision for young sea lions is water or wood. They just can't seem to decide. Is it the cool, brisk, refreshing, invigorating, salty chill of the ocean, or the calm, wooden stability of the pier? Water or wood? Water or wood? Wood or water? Well, either one gets the seal of approval. He can use all the soap in the world. He can soak for hours and hours. He can scrub until the bristles literally fall out of the brush. But you are not gonna get rid of those stripes. The first lesson at manager camp is that in office politics, the only way to get to the top is by standing on the backs of your fellow employees. Oh yeah, you're gonna get dirty, but come on, it's a dirty racket. You don't make it to the top by staying clean. Just remember, be nice on the way up, because you're gonna see them all again on the way back down. When the Robinsons discovered that Goldie could dive all the way to the bottom, they envisioned him making them rich by diving for pearl-filled oysters. Sadly, Goldie just liked getting rocks. Jennifer Jenkins polishes her floor so well you can see yourself in it. And she had to get a closer look. I watch these clips with a little help from my friends. Yeah. Barney couldn't figure out why she insisted he help her unwrap the presents. First of all, it was her birthday, and second of all, she is the one with the thumbs. The majesty of nature. Sometimes when two of God's creatures commune in their natural environment, there just are not words sufficient enough to describe it.
This one's licking a cat.
Unless, of course, you are Gus Macanato, the poet laureate of the forest. Licking a cat? That he is, friend. That he is. And may I say, well phrased, Gus. Well phrased indeed. When Dirk promised he'd get Pugsley out, Pugsley assumed he meant he would hire the best attorneys and exhaust every legal recourse he could possibly find. Nope, Dirk just meant he was busting him out. Raja loved having a baby in the house. Not only was she getting to drink all the leftover formula, but the floor under the high chair was a virtual smorgasbord. And all Raja had to do was rock Baby to sleep and make sure Baby was covered with Mr. Blanky. Oh yeah, this was the start of a beautiful friendship. Coming up, 3 on a match may be bad, but 2 on a stick is divine. And we let the cat out of the bag. And it's a dog. When we return to Funniest Pets and People. Welcome back to Funniest Pets and People. Anytime it's daytime, it is definitely playtime. Mickey loved being petted so much he could almost taste it. You know, all things considered, I bet his family wishes that he would just purr. And so does the dry cleaner. He was making a heck of a racket, but Midnight vowed he wouldn't rest until he got out of that cage. Well, guess he can rest now. Lucy was all set to take a penalty kick, but instead opted for the less popular penalty trip. That's right, it's back and louder and dirtier than ever. It's Pillow Palooza, the original no-holds-barred pure pillow action that can only be Pillow Palooza. You'll see Robin the Hood Plutowski take on Little Jimmy Johnson. And Big Feathers McGinty battle it out with a Pillow Palooka. Good seats are still available, but not for long. Nowhere else will you find the pillow fighting, log sitting, mud splashing action of Pillow Palooza. Buy your ticket today and sit in the splash zone, where you'll get a mug full of souvenir mud. Pillow Palooza. Do not be fooled by cheap imitators. There is only one Pillow Palooza. Look, if you're gonna take the time and energy to play musical chairs, do yourself a favor, okay? I mean, get some real chairs. Dogs love playing fetch, but in the fetch dynamic, dogs can only be the fetcher and not the thrower, right? Therefore, when there is no thrower, the only game the dogs can play is keep away. It may not be fetch, but it's a close second and fun, and it's doable. Do wear whatever you want, but don't get videotaped wearing it. This fashion-conscious pooch loves her designer threads and just loves strutting her stuff in the living room for all to see. Oh yeah, work it, baby. There's just one place where you won't find this fashionista puppista: the catwalk. Normally, Mrs. O'Malley kept the place so cold that Edwina had to wear a sweater even in the summer. But not today. For some reason, Mrs. O'Malley forgot to adjust the thermostat, and Edwina wanted that designer sweater off pronto. There. Wait, what's that noise? Is that the air conditioner? A little help. When you have top-notch fashion sense and impeccable style like Zoe here, you can make anything look good, even a cat food bag. Only problem with this outfit is that you can't see how good you look while you're wearing it. you just take our word for it, Zoe.
You look marvelous.
The best fashion advice is to get 8 hours of sleep every night, or every day, or anytime you can. These two look like they never miss an opportunity to grab some sleep. Bags are a great fashion accessory, but not when they're under your eyes. Coming up, this cat's not just on the show, but he's on the show. When we return to Funniest Pets and People. Welcome back to Funniest Pets and People. How hot is this show? Well, let's just put it this way. Rather than warm up on the hearth in front of a roaring fire, Tayton would rather bask in the heat generated just from our title alone. Hey, Tayton, we're only gonna get hotter. See you next time